That Don't Sound Right is a podcast about talking the way we did before the internet, when you could not prove anyone right or wrong.
All the expertise was contained in the people involved with the conversation. I'm Peter.
I'm Cecil, and I hope you enjoy our conversations. And as you listen, if you find yourself silently saying, that don't sound right, send us a comment. You're one of us.
Spank the alligator no matter what size it is. If it's on the paddleboard with you, you're spanking it.
You can hit it.
Or maybe shoo it off like a
I would spank a
sweep
baby
it off.
alligator.
Welcome back to another episode of That Don't Sound Right, a podcast about talking. We're your co-hosts. I'm Peter Billman.
I'm Cecil Davis.
I want to welcome everyone. We're just trying to have a conversation where we don't Google, we don't fact check each other. We just see what comes out of our brains. And that's kind of how the conversations used to go before fact checking, before chat, APT, or all these AI robots that do your essays or fill out your job application. But we brought someone better than a chat bot.
Yes.
We've got listener number one, Scott. And you know what? I've always wanted to say this. Welcome to the show.
Oh, happy to be here, Peter. Cecil, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been, for those of y'all who don't remember, Scott sat in on the first several episodes and led this podcast into the series of roadside finds.
Yeah, that's the highlight of my life, actually.
Well, we hopefully tonight is going to top that. But real quickly, any roadside finds of note that you'd like to tune us in on, or did you have any near-death experience trying to get that one ratchet strap that you know you shouldn't have?
Now, it's funny you should mention that because the last couple of items I've spotted beside the road that looked interesting, I was just moving too fast and had too tight a schedule to actually go back and get it, so I did not get to investigate thoroughly. So
the question I have is, if you had enough time, would you yanked on the brakes?
Yeah,
try to get it? You would have just dove down onto the shoulder and trying to get those things.
Retired listener number one would do nothing but just be hitting off ramps and going back to find out what he was missing.
I sent out a notice to you guys on Sunday and nobody responded.
What was that?
That was a stainless steel grill on the side of the road on the way home from church.
So funny you should mention that. Today I saw in a super secret chat discussion, goes back to July, I believe it was, where one of you had noted some fruit beside the road on a University Parkway.
That was me.
Yep, and the only comment was, that's a really tough way to get some fruit.
Yeah, it was like it was either fruit or like 2 tomatoes,
like a
or
cantaloupe
oranges,
with 2 tomatoes or something. Yeah.
And it was right there where the vegetable co-op is. So it was probably pretty fresh.
Oh, it should be all right.
You didn't put that part
That's
out.
sad, though, when you think about it. Someone just bought their produce and it flew out of the side of their car. They probably stuck it on the hood or the roof as they were getting in and forgot it was there.
Which reminds me of a really interesting roadside find, which was a chicken that had come out of a chicken truck.
Was it alive?
Oh, really?
It was alive.
Okay.
This person, a former classmate of mine, took it home, nursed it for a few days, but I think it eventually succumbed to its injuries.
Oh, yeah.
Did not make it, yeah.
They eat it?
No.
Oh, did they
Sure
not?
Well, I don't know.
Probably a little bruised.
Probably a little bruised and battered, yeah.
Oh, man.
So you've gone from listener number 1 to co-host number 3 tonight.
All right. I feel like it's a promotion.
That's good. It's a good job if you can get it. I don't know about the pay, but it's a good job.
I think we should recognize that people who have just started listening, which that could be a lot of you, actually, might not understand why we call Scott listener number 1.
Yeah, will you tell the story?
It is because Scott was the number one listener and first listener to the podcast. And probably maybe the only listener for a while. So you got the podcast kicked off on the listening side.
Well, to the credit of the podcast host at the time, he was personally engaging me outside of the podcast to listen. So it was some one-on-one marketing there
That's right.
probably did the job.
Yeah.
Well, I remember you distinctly coming up to me at a picnic and you said, hey, Cecil told me about this idea y'all had for a podcast. You should do it. And if you do it, I'll be your first listener.
Okay, well, I believed in it as much as you did, if not more.
I think you did, but here we are. Here we are, 73 episodes later.
Sounds about right.
Man, 73 episodes.
Yeah, so.
But tonight we want to recap one of our most popular episodes.
Yes.
Which would be our New Year's, was it Eve?
Eve.
It was New Year's Eve episode.
It was the wildlife episode.
And this is where we talked about encountering wildlife. We talked about government crow. We talked about daredevil squirrels. And we also talk about, well, let me just read you the letter. So one of the things that we really enjoy is fan mail. And so tdsrpodcast@gmail.com is a good way to reach us.
Or hate mail.
Or hate
Any
mail.
mail.
Yeah, any mail is really fine. As long as you're not, a Nigerian prince or something.
Right.
Which I do have a story about a Nigerian prince I will bring up at our next episode. So stay tuned about the Nigerian prince. But he sent us an email, and we really love these emails. And so let me go ahead and I read the first half of the email because it talked about squirrels, Scott.
Yes.
But then you kind of followed up, and then you got into
A little segue.
no, not a segue. You proceeded to light us up for our questionable tactics for dealing with a large reptile. So I'll just pick up where the letter left off. You were talking about squirrels jumping, but as your last podcast pointed out, we know that squirrels can fall. I too have seen that happen. Is their play careless? Maybe. But not as nearly as careless as Peter spanking an alligator with a canoe paddle. That was the tedious-arest thing I've heard in a while. Not because I doubt it happened, but because an otherwise intelligent person would think this is a good idea. Then I listened in amazement as Cecil quickly jumped on the smack the alligator bandwagon and agreed that this was a sound tactic. That the two of you can so quickly come to agreement that startling a man-sized, meat-eating reptile with teeth and jaws that could quickly eviscerate Peter's soft pink flesh is the best course of action causes me to shudder. Now, in the spirit of TDSR, I will not Google this. But I stand firm in my conviction that even being within canoe paddle distance of an alligator is unwise. And if you were to compile a list of what to do if you find yourself in spanking distance of an alligator, actually spanking the alligator would not even make the list. I'm grateful that it ended well. But don't think this is a case where the ends justifies the means. Round of applause. Very nice letter.
That's
very nice.
It's one of the best letters we've ever got.
That's
That's some good writing right there.
That was good writing. Some good
That
reading,
wasn't a
too.
chat bot, was it? You didn't use
No.
That was,
Maybe I was applying to be the blogger. For the
Oh man,
podcast.
that would be a good.
I didn't remember how well that was done.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that was well done. That was well done.
And it was
So-
heartfelt.
Yeah,
I could tell.
I could tell that. So you really didn't think that was a good idea.
I can't imagine who would think that was a good idea.
Well, you're right. I did think it was a good idea. He had made such a compelling story as he was telling it. I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense to scare the alligator out of the way.
So I have a question for you, Peter.
Yeah.
When you looked up from your lure,
Right.
saw the alligator,
So just to recap the story, I'm canoeing on a river in Florida, doing some fishing, and I'm looking down. I'm tying a lure on to my line, so I'm just
Drifting aimlessly.
drifting aimlessly, and I drift into this wide, big patch of lily pads towards the side. But in Florida, the whole side of the river is covered in lily pads. I drift over, and as I look up and look over to my left, there's the alligator.
yeah. And so, did you ask yourself any questions at that point, or did you just act completely on instinct?
So
Tell me everything you thought up until the time you spanked the alligator, to use your word.
So one of the things that I've realized about the adult male brain is that even into the college years, they don't think ahead too far.
How old were you in this situation?
I believe I was in college.
Oh, that's different.
Okay.
I actually thought this was like the Peter we know it now.
No.
Okay, keep
But
going.
honestly, I don't think, I just can't think of me doing anything different. So,
Now, so Scott pointed out to me at church, he said, normally we have the disclaimer of you should not do some of the things that we talk
Yeah.
about at
Yeah.
home.
that's right.
Yeah.
But in your defense,
I was not at
you were
home.
not at home.
I was well out of my element. So, but that brings up to another funny. But you asked the question.
Yeah.
What was going through my mind?
Yeah.
I guess the only thing that went through my mind is I want to see this alligator run. I want to see this thing take off, and I wasn't going to use my hand, and the paddle was there, and
So I'll tell you,
yeah,
new information that this is college age Peter.
yeah.
And not, husband, father of multiple kids, Peter.
Right.
So I have a very different understanding of the whole situation now, and I don't like it any better. but I actually, I see how you got there.
You can cut me some slack.
I can cut you some slack.
What if I'm a couple years out of college?
No.
Okay, all right. So we'll have to go back to our my wife, who is our encyclopedia.
Yeah. She'll find out.
She will know the date.
Yeah.
She'll know if
Were
she
you
knew
dating
the
her
time.
at this point?
I don't think I was.
Okay.
But I don't remember clearly.
She'll be better able to hone in on that date than you.
Right.
So here's the picture I would have in what would happen if I were to smack an alligator.
Okay, yeah.
Is that it would lightning quick do a 180-degree turn and lunge for me, jaws wide open.
Yeah, right.
And then I would probably, in an effort to get away from it, turn over the canoe.
Dump your canoe.
And be in a gator-filled tributary of some sort. And probably just either die of drowning or of mutilation one. I don't know which.
Yeah,
That's how I would see it happening.
That was a possibility when you hit him.
Why, they turn around and come
They
after
could turn
me?
after you,
I
yeah.
guess it could have been.
Yeah.
Now, but my experience had been the entire day that as we're paddling down this river, there are alligators along the banks.
Yeah.
And they were, just when we got into eyesight of them, they would go into the water.
Into the water.
Into the water. They were getting away. They were having nothing to do with us. Unless they were getting in the water, prepared for us to dump overboard, and then subsequently eat us.
Possibly. Do you think that becoming more comfortable, the more alligators you saw, made you less fearful of them?
I could have been getting, a little complacent with my
Yeah.
alligators.
You got complacent enough that you hit one.
That's right.
I would think that's pretty complacent.
Or it's bold. So I've got my super secret text message line wide open, and I would just like to show you a picture, and I'd like you to describe to me what you see in this picture.
Okay, I see a picture of what looks like paddleboarders. Adjacent to lily pads. And I think there's an alligator in the background.
Yes.
And the participants on the paddleboards are grinning ear to ear.
Now, do you know these participants?
I don't know these participants, but my friend, listener from Florida, they're friends with him. And he was also on a paddleboard.
So,
But now
Now-
you were in a canoe.
I was in a canoe.
Can I address listener from Florida?
I feel
personally right
safer
now?
in a canoe.
Oh, absolutely.
I feel safer in a canoe than paddling
Yes.
with my ankles at jaw level.
And a very unstable.
Yeah, so this picture is basically them posing with an alligator.
Yes, they're posing.
So there's a picture of some paddleboarders posing with an alligator on the bank. So here's the other thing that you also need to know about this particular alligator. So there's a zoom up of the alligator.
Okay.
And there's a yellow circle on the banks. And you can't make it out too clearly, but it's a bunch of baby alligators. So now are we not just dealing with an alligator? We're dealing with a
mama
territorial
alligator.
mama alligator at ankle level.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a lot of alligators.
All I have to say to this is, Florida listener, I may have to.
Now we're not gonna call him Florida Man.
Okay. No.
But we're not gonna call him Florida Man.
You could become Florida listener number one because I don't know if I could continue to associate with this crowd. So I have probably a unhealthy apprehension, we'll call it, of water and
really?
deep water and drowning. I'm not a good swimmer. I'm not a swimmer.
All right.
I don't have a particular fear of alligators, but I have a good respect for them.
Yeah, right.
And I just don't think any of this appeals to me at all.
Now, I will say this alligator that I spanked, I did not feel it was big enough to jump out of the water.
You described its length as being what, 5 feet?
Yeah, right.
5 feet.
Yeah,
Is
it's
an
as tall
adult
as I
human.
am. Yeah, it's as tall as I am, right?
Exactly.
But it's not as big and round as I am.
But his teeth are, how many teeth does he have compared to you? And how sharp are they? And how big does his mouth open?
At the time, I did not feel that this alligator could capsize my boat.
I'll chalk that up to
I'm a very
brain.
experienced canoer.
Okay.
I know what it takes to flip a canoe. I did not think this even with its tail underneath my boat, I don't think it could have slapped me hard enough to flip me over.
None of this changes anything, except I just want to encourage you to offer disclaimers after any of
Yes,
this. Yeah,
that's
just
right.
so you going forward, you don't lead people astray and into
Alligator infested waters.
That's right.
Yeah.
So on my honeymoon, we arrived at Kiowa Beach at night,
All right.
which is where we're staying, and walked to a restaurant, walked back to where we were staying, and unknowingly walked through alligator territory.
Oh wow!
Because the next morning there were signs, be careful of alligators, and we just kind of
walking through.
And so there was an alligator that would stay outside of our place on the bank.
I have a personal philosophy about that.
What's that?
I never honeymoon where there are alligators.
Or at least animals that could eat you.
Yeah. Well, I actually honeymooned in the Great Smokies, so there are probably some bears.
There's some probably
eating.
bears
Yeah.
there. That's right.
So I actually have a companion story to this.
Should we do some words of wisdom?
Yeah, well, so the words of wisdom tonight are, we've talked about letting sleeping dogs lie.
That is a line we've used. That's some words of wisdom we've used
But
before.
tonight it's let sleeping alligators lie.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let them rest.
Yeah. So whereas let sleeping dogs lie talks about not bringing up things from the past, letting sleeping alligators lie just means what it means.
Yeah, let them be. Yeah.
Let alligators alone.
I tell you what. I thought about this more, and I still think I would do the same thing. Even today, even if the alligator was a little bit bigger, because I think I really wanted that alligator to be afraid of me. And the only way I can make it afraid if it was smacked with a paddle. Because if I gently kind of nuzzled it and pushed it around, I did not want it to turn around and say, "Ooh, what's that?" I wanted him to be very, very sure
startled
that something was messing with him or her. Now, this case of the mama on the paddle boards.
Well, I tell you,
the whole grinning thing makes me laugh.
I'm a little more sympathetic to you, Cecil, jumping on the smack the alligator bandwagon. Having been in the presence of you have a winsome way about you, Peter. And it's like, wow, maybe he's right. Maybe we should go beating alligators all the time.
That's the beauty of this conversation.
Oh, it is.
Because you probably could get on Google and say, what's the best thing to do when around an alligator? And like you said, probably spanking the alligator is not on
the top 10. I think the little alligators would actually, because if the big alligator is one thing, but imagine if you got one of those little alligators on your paddleboard.
Ankle biter.
Yeah.
Wow.
On your paddleboard.
Yeah.
It couldn't kill you, but it would probably make you
really
life miserable, yeah.
So have you guys been on paddleboards?
Yes.
I have never been on a paddleboard.
I was on it for about 6 seconds before I fell off, and then another 6 seconds, and it takes some balance.
Yeah.
And it's not something as easy as it looks.
Yeah, no, I thought I saw that picture and I said, that don't look right.
Yeah.
I've paddleboarded out into the intercoastal waterway and across it, and it can be a little. They can be unsteady.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I think they'd be more unsteady if a small alligator joined you on the board.
Oh, no doubt. But then you're going to be the fear of what would happen with its mama down below.
Yeah, you've got to make a decision.
You've got to make a decision. Yeah.
Are you going to stay on the board with the little alligator,
biting your toes, or the big mama biting your whole leg?
I'm still going back to spank the alligator no matter what size it is. If it's on the paddleboard with it, you're spanking it.
You can hit it.
Or maybe shoo it off like a
I would spank a
sweep
baby
it off.
alligator. Yeah.
So I actually have a companion story. to
Tell
this.
me about this
I don't
companion
remember
story.
what age I was, but my dad and I were, and my dad's a listener, by the way. My dad and I had gone in. We're in the swamp.
Whoa. Your dad's a listener?
My dad's a listener.
He's from your past, though.
He's from
He knows you.
He knows me.
Oh,
so it's
interesting.
So he still listens. So that's
Okay.
good.
So that goes against the whole.
That goes against the rule that we have that if you're from my past, you probably don't listen.
All right.
But Dad and I were in the swamp behind my. We've talked about before.
The swamp of Bladenboro.
Yeah, in Bladenboro, and we were at a place called the Old Dam, which is an old dam across the swamp, and there was a large cottonmouth.
Okay.
Big cottonmouth, and it seems bigger in my mind, but it was a big snake. I mean, he'd been in there for a long time. So again, we thought the right course of action was to hit the snake. The same reasoning that maybe you could startle him enough that it would go away. But so Dad picked up a log. I was a little fella. I was behind Dad. Dad was in front of me. He hit the cottonmouth, and the log splintered. And when it did, the cottonmouth did exactly what you were afraid of. It came down the hill, came down the little rise toward us. And then as we were backing up, Dad ran over me. So we both kind of ended up in a heap. And then the snake came down toward us and then turned and then went back into the water. But there was a moment where he was coming toward us.
Oh, yeah.
So we hit another reptile and it had the opposite effect that it had.
Well, there you go. That's a nice companion story. What have you learned from that?
I don't know. I mean,
I don't think you learned a thing.
I don't think I did either. Actually. I learned not to be standing right behind Dad when he's running backwards.
He's going to get out of the way if you're in his way.
He was bigger than I was.
It seems like, yes, if you see one person moving towards a reptile, you need to be moving the opposite direction.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you need to
That's
do.
a gift right there.
Because if the thing turns on you, we invoke the rule of you don't have to outrun the reptile.
Yeah.
You just have to outrun Cecil.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, I should have been moving in the opposite direction
That's
at
right.
that point.
As soon as you saw the log being lifted up,
Right.
time to bail out.
So are alligators like, there's some things, if you see one, there's 10 more you don't see. Is that the case with alligators?
Are you saying do they come in like packs?
Well, so
Are they a
I've
community?
heard that if you see a cockroach in your house,
Yeah.
you're already infested.
All right.
Or a mouse.
Or a mouse. It's not a lone mouse.
There's not, okay.
So if you see an alligator and you scare it off, you're probably not safe to go skinny dipping at that point.
Well, I tell you what, I mean, when we were on this river, I knew there were more than just the one alligator. I knew there were plenty of alligators. I suspect that these guys on the paddleboard were on this waterway knowing there were alligators.
They were on something.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like a spring, some natural springs there, like lakes and spring areas. And yeah, imagine especially in Florida. Now, if you see a lone alligator walking around your neighborhood, I don't think you have to worry about a pack of alligators, but you've heard of people showing up and there's an alligator in their pool.
Well, I've heard
But I don't think
body
there's-
of water in Florida, there's an alligator.
Right, but I don't think you have to worry about that. If you see one alligator in your pool,
Okay.
that there's not one, over in the Barca Lounge you're hanging out.
Got
in,
it, I see, yeah.
Or in the hot tub.
Well, it didn't sound right. None of this is sounding
None of
right
this.
tonight.
This has been one of those episodes.
Yes. But you have come to the end of another That Don't Sound Right.
Hey, but before we close, we want to thank everyone for listening. If this is your first time and enjoyed the conversation, would you consider hitting the subscribe button or the check marks on Apple Podcasts? Would you also rate us or even leave us a review? And again, thanks for listening.
Remember, there's still time to get your sweetheart a TDSR shirt, toboggan, pint glass, sticker.
That brings up an interesting thing.
I got an ad today for a TDSR shirt in Valentine pink.
Really?
Yeah, came across my email today.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know how that happened.
You don't think it's a forgery, do you?
I don't know. If somebody starts forging us, that would make me very happy. If we're good enough to be forged, then that's great. But That Don't Sound Right is a production of TDSR Podcast in conjunction with Camel City Studios. I am your co-host and sound engineer, Cecil. Peter is your other host and web designer. And tonight we've got the third host, Scott, which we'll obviously introduce again. Emily is our graphic designer. Giorgio is our merchandise tester. Brent is our brand ambassador. And as always, listener number one is Scott. So until next Saturday night, keep talking.
And stay curious.